equation mathematically. David Keith, again, the world's most recognized geoengineer, stating a goal of 20 million tons annually. That would equate to perhaps 600 to 800 tankers, military tankers, dispersing 60 to 70 tons per day, 24/7, 365 days a year. Now, we know we have a different equation than that because we have commercial aircraft involved as well. We're not implicating commercial pilots, not implicating commercial personnel. These systems are automated, but we know that their planes are being used because, again, we have photographs of the nozzles mounted on the pylons aimed into the engine exhaust, and we have flight tracker from the ground. We can monitor these planes. We have them on film, spraying, turning on and off, so they're being used also. So we're talking about an unimaginable amount of materials, George. This is a climate engineering Manhattan project.
The tic-tac-toe patterns that we see in the sky, what are they?
Many people see the X's and other grid-type patterns, and we can speculate on some of that, but it appears, at least in the case of some of the X's that appear, that may be a way for them to more easily track the movement of air currents from satellite imagery. So, again, we can speculate about that, but the fact that these are not condensation trails, they're particulate trails, it's indisputable if we look at all the data, testing, film footage, photographs of nozzles, patents, government documents, et cetera, et cetera. This is absolutely going on.
Who's paying for this? The taxpayer?
No. I think if we know about the financial system, George, we know that the central bankers can and do print whatever they want. So when the Pentagon is missing officially $8.5 trillion since the late 90s.
They can't find it.
How do you lose that much?
Yeah, really.
So the bottom line is, so long as we have the petrodollar, the dollar is the global reserve currency, which is why I think we can safely say that Saudi Arabia was not on the list of travel bans, because if they stopped using the petrodollar, that would be the end of the road for the empire. So we have a very complex scenario, but the central bankers, the petrodollar, the dollar being the global reserve currency, that's what's allowed the U.S. empire to expand to the level it has. And this is something people need to understand and realize, that the 700 and something bases abroad that in the 150 plus countries, this is not about freedom and democracy. It's about resources.
Dane, there's a blizzard warning in Hawaii. What the heck is happening?
Well, at the same time, though, we have staggeringly warm temperatures at both poles. Let's plug that into the equation.
Yeah.
They can chemically nucleate snow over the pyramids, over Hawaii, in Dubai, anywhere to make the headlines they want. But what you don't see, George, is the last two Christmases in a row, at Christmas Day, we had 40 degrees and rain at the North Pole. Right now, we have record warm temperatures, North and South Pole. We just had all-time record high set in Antarctica yesterday of nearly 70 degrees, 65 degrees in Antarctica. We don't hear about that. That's about 80 degrees above normal, 80 degrees above normal. So I encourage people to simply, again, not believe me, look at the bigger picture, look past the spun-baited headlines that are designed to confuse them and divide them as to the true state of the climate. That's what climate engineering is for. That's one of the primary objectives.
Let's take some calls, as promised. Let's go east of the Rockies in Georgia. Gary is with us on Coast to Coast. Gary, welcome to the program. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
First time through, sir. I've called many times. I listen every chance I get.
Well, thank you.
I'm a police officer. I'm on duty, but I've been taking notes. This is important. 40 minutes before you mentioned it, I wrote down seed germination. I have been a gardener all my life. I have seen up to a 70% decrease in germination in certain seeds, and I attribute that to these metal particles that are affecting the microbes in the soil. The second point that I wanted to make, and I've heard this brought up, and I've heard George bring it up, that aggression, what's happening with aggression? We are collecting these particles in our bodies, and we are exposed to all these electromagnetic fields from everything, from our cell phones, from power lines, from office equipment. And I attribute, if you will consider that the people who have dementia, Alzheimer's, how some of these people, they could be a minister for 50 years, and then they turn into a vile, profaning individual. When this strikes them, it affects those centers in their brain that causes them to have this hostility. I believe that these particles are responsible for some of the aggression, and I am a police officer, have been since '94.
And thank you for serving, by the way, there.
Oh, I appreciate it. I believe that this can be attributed to some of the road rage and aggression that was not before. Like I said, since '94, this thing has increased exponentially. Since I'm on duty, I will make one more comment. Then I will listen to your answer off the air.
All right.
The Holy Bible says that in the end time, you will neither be able to sow nor reap. This goes to this germination problem that I have personally seen. And there was another point. Let me see what it was. And it also says that there'll be brother against brother, and all of this about the aggression. And it also says that you will not be able to tell one season from another. It's been close to 80 degrees here in North Georgia.
Oh, it's crazy. Dead of winter.
In the dead of winter. And I'm not telling you just one day. I mean the month of February. I have seen temperatures around 80 degrees, and we should be having daytime highs in the upper 40s to the lower 50s, nighttime lows in the mid-20s to the low 30s, and this is not happening. This, like I said, this is the first opportunity I have got to speak with George.
Well, I'm glad you got through, Gary, finally.
I've called 1,000 times, but I got through.
All right. We're going to get some answers here for you, and you be safe out there. Dane, let's talk about his thoughts about the germination issue of his seeds.
First of all, Gary's exactly right. And we know because we have peer-reviewed study on the effect of bioavailable metals, specifically aluminum, on root systems. It causes organisms to shut down nutrient uptake to protect their DNA. So that's on top of killing soil microbes. George, you know what happens when you take an antibiotic in the body? You can be susceptible to fungal infection in the body because you're killing your beneficial microbes, correct?
That's right.
Same thing's happening in the environment. So we have rampant fungal explosion everywhere. We have beneficial microbes being systematically killed off by these bioavailable metals. We know the effect of the metals on the root system, so we see trees and forests dying slow, protracted deaths. In addition to being exposed to the extensive UV, disrupted hydrological cycle, and so forth, we have soils virtually being sterilized. That's why we have Monsanto, again, creating genetically modified abiotic stress-resistant seeds, disaster capitalists. We spoke about that earlier. In regard to people's behavior, we have manganese in the mix as well. There's peer-reviewed study on the effect of manganese in the human organism, and it does cause many of the symptoms that Gary described. We are an electrical organism. Life is electrical. When you disrupt those frequencies with these massive microwave transmissions, you're going to disrupt those organisms. So we have a literal toxic soup happening in our environment. We're all swimming in it. We're bound to see these sorts of effects. In regards to the temperatures, again, Gary's right. Again, we have the warmest February ever recorded in countless places around the globe. And I can't stress enough the non-linear nature of what's unfolding right now. It's unfolding in the geologic blink of an eye. And those who don't believe this, you will soon. This is unfolding at unimaginable speed.
What does barium do once it hits us?
Barium has immune-disrupting effects. It can cause heart palpitations, a lot of other effects. I was in the forest with 7 other forestry workers that we were doing habitat restoration during a chemically isonucleated event. In the course of 15 minutes, all of us developed nosebleeds. So
that's weird.
We have this happening in many places, and we can't know in any given circumstance or dispersion exactly what was in the mix. But this is an experiment that's in a state of flux. They have no concern for the consequences whatsoever. How many times have we seen that? George, you know, people ask this question all the time. Again, why would, quote, they do this to themselves? And I stress that same answer. Not only are we dealing with a power addiction, how many examples do we need of them doing this to themselves? We have a triple meltdown in Fukushima, no technology to fix it, no end in sight. We're building 60 more nuke plants right now. We've detonated 2,000-plus nuclear weapons. That's caused permanent damage to the ozone layer, which, by the way, whenever you want to, I just got data from a 40-year veteran of NASA, aeronautics engineer that's working directly with geoengineeringwatch.org. His UV data we posted yesterday It's beyond alarming, he predicts, and the current pace will have a total collapse of the ozone layer by 2025. It's already horrifically bad now. By 2025, on this current course, will be total collapse, no ozone layer.
Well, that happens. Skin cancers will go through the roof.
It's already, today, with current metering, we're seeing UVB levels 1,000% higher than we're being told, 10 times higher. We're seeing UVC on the surface. As your listeners understand the scale, you have UVA, UVB, UVC, then X-ray. We're told UVC stops 100,000 feet up in the atmosphere, no longer. So we're seeing what amounts to a hole in the ozone over the northern hemisphere. Canadian scientists have been fired on the ozone team. Governments in Australia firing their ozone research people as well. They're simply trying to hide reality as long as possible. And as I stated earlier, you have right now illegal federal gag orders on all National Weather Service and all NOAA employees.
And if you don't get on this half hour, we've got a full hour to go with Dane Wigington as we talk about geoengineering, so not to worry. Patty in Seattle, welcome to the show. Hi, Patty.
Hi, George. Hi, Dane.
Hi, Patty.
Hi, Dane. I've been a follower of your website, geoengineeringwatch.org, for a very long time. And I wanted to tell you that I saw my first chemtrail. I know not to call them that anymore. But in 1996 in Oregon, and it was so astonishing when I first saw it was two of them that went straight up into the sky. And from that moment on, I started documenting them. And by now, I've taken thousands upon thousands of pictures of chemtrails and various anomalies. I don't bother taking pictures unless they're very unusual. But what I wanted to tell you is just night before last, it snowed in Seattle, caused quite a traffic snarl up. I went outside and looked at my thermometer, and it was 43 and 44 degrees. And so I held the thermometer out in front of the camera and took a picture of it snowing. And not only that, it was sticking. And that was no snow I've ever seen before. Would you like to tell people about that?
Thank you, Patty, for bringing that up. Again, we're back to a patent called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. And I would challenge listeners anywhere when they get the radical weather whiplash swings from record highs to snow, monitor the temperatures at which the snow first begins to fall. So we have the paid disinformation people at organizations like the Weather Channel, that's owned by the power structure, Bain Capital and Blackstone in case of Weather Channel. Monsanto owns some of the weather disseminating agencies. Rothschilds own others, so they have to control the message. So they're trying to explain to the population why it's snowing at these extraordinarily warm temperatures. So, in effect, they're simply a part of the crime at this point, are they not, when they're helping to hide the crimes? So your listeners should look at the temperatures at which the snow first begins to fall. The chemical ice nucleation creates a dense cold layer that settles to the surface, so the temperatures eventually come down further and further as the ice nucleation event goes on. We're getting reports of snow falling at temperatures as high as 56 degrees, and the patents state that they can create chemically nucleated material as high as 50-plus degrees, so this all matches. Again, we have the Chinese government openly admitting they were chemically nucleating snowstorms. Any of your listeners can look this up. Fox News, Popular Science covered it. This is what people need to understand. These cool downs are chemically nucleated. They're completely engineered, and it's an attempt to hide the severity of warming that's occurring, confuse and divide the population until the last possible moment, at which time everything implodes at once. So people need to wake up. We need to beat them to the intersection and expose this issue before they're ready. Thank you for bringing that point up, Patty. Extremely important. Should not be snowing at temperatures above 32 in almost all cases, certainly nowhere near the temperatures we see. This is a chemically nucleated engineered event.
Yesterday they had golf ball size hail in the Midwest, Dane, that you can imagine how that hurts falling from above.
Extremely dangerous.
My gosh.
Let's elaborate on the ice balls. In fact, not just hail, which again the nucleation process is starting earlier. That's why you're having the huge hailstones. Your listeners can also look this subject up. Look up Ice Balls, Lake Michigan. So in the last 5-6 years, we've had 75-pound ice balls showing up in Lake Michigan, perfectly spherical ice balls with lake water of 40 degrees. How does that happen? Because they're chemically nucleating, and it causes that phenomenon. And that's what they're doing over the poles, George. That's what's statistically keeping the ice pack from imploding right now, is massive chemical nucleation. We have NASA images, astounding images that we'll post soon that show the chemical nucleation occurring. We have other NASA images that show inarguable climate engineering and radio frequency signature on that climate engineering. If people would simply look at the data at Geoengineering Watch, they would be shocked. But Patty, again, thank you for bringing this up. Extremely important primary aspect of climate engineering is engineering winter out of warmth.
All right, let's take another call. Let's go to Brian in Topeka, Kansas. Brian, it is your turn on Coast to Coast.
Hi, George. Very nice to meet you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
I listen to your music and your program quite often.
Thank you.
And just as much as I get out there, look at the little lines being processed across the skies here in the plains, and they go from point A to point B, and they cross to the X, and then the cloud, then the sky turns black or dark. But the hail and the problems we're having here are really not that severe. It's just a fact that, well, it does affect my lungs. I think I like to camp out.